the school board candidates for USD497. And I will first introduce our moderator, Noreen Spears. Noreen has a long involvement as an advocate, as a parent, as an organizer of Young Dems organizations in the high schools. She's worked very hard on behalf of the local school system. She knows the issues and she cares passionately about them, and we felt that she would be the perfect person to chair this forum. Noreen will ask the candidates to introduce themselves in their opening remarks and then proceed to the questions. Again, please hold your applause till the end of the forum. You'll be doing the candidates a favor, and I think it'll move just a little bit better and easier. I also want to note that we're not able to take questions directly from the audience. Partly this is a COVID thing, the logistics of trying to move microphones around safely, up and down the stairs, etc., and also partly time constraints. We've asked the candidates to take questions instead in the lobby. So after you've heard people's positions and what they have to say, you will have a chance to follow up afterwards with them individually, and we hope that you do so. This is a great group of candidates, and I am very pleased to turn the program over to them and their moderator, Noreen Spears. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning. Welcome back to this beloved space. It is so good to see you all, and welcome to all those joining virtually. It is so wonderful that that has now been added to the Lord's Art Center and what we can do here during our Saturday seminars. Welcome also to all of our candidates for the USD497 School Board. Thank you for running, and especially for your willingness to serve in this incredibly important, unpaid, volunteer position. I have a few housekeeping announcements you've already heard several times. Please no clapping in between the questions. We will thank everyone at the end and recognize our candidates then. I am also going to ask the candidates to answer questions in the order that they are sitting, and then pass the microphones to the right, obviously within your table. And then, so Nate will start with the first question, and then the second question will start with Douglas, and we'll just go around clockwise. I know we could randomize, but with 11, it would be a little crazy for your moderator. Okay. Our agenda today will include 1-minute questions as well as a speed round at the end in which the questions were written to be answered with a yes or no and a very quick, simple explanation. These questions were meant to supplement, not to repeat, what was discussed in other forums, and I'd like to congratulate both the candidates and the NAACP on an incredibly informative forum on Thursday night, and you can watch that on their Facebook page. They are Lawrence KS NAACP. Okay, with that, I would like to invite our candidates to introduce themselves and to tell us why you are running for a position on the USD497 School Board. You have 1 minute. Nate, please start us off.
My name is Nate Mortius. I own RPG on Mass Street. I currently sit on 2 boards in the community here, Trinity and Home Care, as well as the Lawrence Restaurant Association. I'm also an elder at City Church Lawrence. I'm running for school board because I have 4 children in the district, 2 of whom are adopted through foster care, and 1 of which has special needs. And when we were able to see all the resources available to us as a family through the special needs program, it really just, it blew us away, and we realized what an asset this is to the community, and I want to do everything I can to help bring those resources, bring the wonderful experiences we've had to the entire community.
My name is Douglas Redding. I'm a school bus driver and longtime resident of Lawrence, Kansas. I'm running representation of the central and east side of Lawrence, Kansas, which I think has been short-shrifted. I have lots of ideas. I don't know how practical they are, but I do know that we need some change and support. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Stevens. I am a lifelong Lawrencian. I'm the mom of 4. I have children who are a incoming junior, 5th grader, incoming kindergartner, and a recent graduate of Free State High School. I decided to run for school board because I noticed I have some firsthand experience with some adversities and understand and value the lived experience, and really truly feel that in order to write policy and implement procedure that positively impacts our community, we have to truly diversify our governing bodies and diversify in all aspects: race, socioeconomic status, educational background, etc. I hope to bring that viewpoint and those that lived experience into the school board.
Hello, hello. My name is Andrew Nussbaum. I am running because I'm a public education school teacher. I'm running because I'm a therapeutic special education teacher. I'm running because I'm a social justice educator. I'm running because for far too long, our district has cared more about PR than people, has cared more about compliance than creativity and community. I am running because I believe in relationship-based growth and deep systems work. I am running because we must act on and understand and believe that Black Lives Matter in school, at school. I'm running for all the marginalized students and alongside them. I'm running because I am no longer going to work in this district for the same reasons why I'm going to run in this district. I'm running because we need to hold our district leadership accountable, and we need to speak truth to power, and I'm ready to work alongside you to do that. I'm running because we need to look at equity as an actual redistribution of resources to certified and classified staff and away from district leadership and administration.
Hello, I'm Melissa Clissold, and I am a previous paraeducator in Lawrence Public School District. I'm currently the cheer coach for Liberty Memorial Central and Billy Mills Middle Schools, and I own MC Sports Awards. And like Andrew, I'm running because of my experience in our school buildings. Our staff and our students, they need a voice at the table. They need someone to advocate for what they really need. And unless you've been in the buildings for more than just a photo op, you know that we are not valued, that we don't have the resources we need, and the district does not provide the support that our students and staff really need. We talk about we have a teacher shortage. I was in a situation where last year that it took extreme measures to get any help. I actually had to call a school board member and show the damage, like the injuries that I had, that the district was ignoring. We pleaded for help, and they didn't do anything until I called the school board member, and thankfully she was able to help.
Hello, my name is Kelly Jones, and for 2 more days, I am the president of the school board, at which point Erica Hill will take over, and I am glad for that so that I can focus on this campaign. I'm proud of the work that I've done on the board so far. I'm 25 years now a social worker in many different areas within that realm. I've worked in schools and hospitals and hospices, in correctional facilities, and really any place that you can think a social worker might be. And my advocacy for public education is really about being part of the solution to the folks that I've served over the years. I am particularly proud that the day that I landed in Lawrence, Kansas about 19 years ago with a baby in hand, and there was a school, the state school board did not want to teach evolution. Maybe some of you will remember that. That is when I started this work. I worked on campaigns around comprehensive education. I've knocked on doors for Laura Kelly because she was a public ed, and I care very deeply about how we do this work. I've done it both with kids, in front of them directly, and certainly on their behalf on the board.
Yes, thank you. GR.
My name is G.R. Gordon Ross. Lived in Lawrence 25 years, so not technically a townie, but really close. All of my kids are townies. 3 Lawrence High graduates. I have a sophomore and an 8th grader at Billy Mills. In the last 3.5 years on the board, I feel like we've accomplished a lot of great things. Hiring Dr. Lewis is probably one of the single greatest things that we've done, but we've also done a lot of great work with the equity policy that we've done. I've had the privilege to serve on negotiations on the facilities committee, on the boundary committee, and feel like we've done great work there. Chose to run for re-election because I don't believe that the work is finished. And I feel like that with the experience that I have and the work that I've put in, that I can contribute to continue to move that work forward, can continue to provide positive impacts to the district and build on the foundation that we have already created. Thank you.
Thank you. Travis. Oh, sorry. Start over again.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. I'm Travis Tozer, and I want to serve the board for 2 reasons. First, I care deeply about public education. I really believe in it. Second, I feel my experience as an engineer would be of benefit to the board and to the district. I was a field engineer for 10 years, and in that time I worked alongside thousands of people. So far, I haven't met anyone that I couldn't work with. In short, I simply want to serve my community and my district.
Thank you. Kay.
Good morning. My name is Kay Emerson. I'm originally from Topeka, Kansas. I moved here about 20 years ago to study at the University of Kansas. I'm a graduate at Go Jayhawks. I hold a degree in psychology with a focus on child development, and I hold a master's degree in human services. I'm a wife, a working mother, and devoted community member focused on improving opportunity, access, and choice in our public schools. With a background in national service, career consulting, business negotiations, grants management, workforce innovation, services with individuals with disabilities, and anti-discrimination advocacy for all people, I have used these skills to invest back in our community by chairing our district equity teams with Jessica Beeson and Dr. Anna Stubblefield, by vetting our equity policies and examining our curriculums. I can go on, but I'll encourage you to check out my website. So the reason why I'm running for school board is because I want to ensure equitable experiences across our school district, regardless of the person that you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda.
Hello, good morning. My name is Miranda Zarlingo. To tell you a little bit about myself, I have a 2nd grader in the district. I went to the University of Kansas for early childhood education. I spent 10 years as a child care director, worked with a variety of families' experiences. During that time, I spent time with teachers and getting to know what families' needs and teachers' needs. 6 years ago, I chose to move back and bring I'm originally from Chicago. I moved back to raise my daughter here. I wanted her to have the Lawrence experience. And so now watching her go through the school district, I am sitting here because I want to be a voice for parents and students. The everyday struggle that I've seen and heard is something that I don't feel is being addressed. And parents have reached out to me and are telling me their story, and that's very important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus.
Hello. Hello, I'm Marcus Logan. I am a lifelong Lawrence resident. I'm currently the owner of an entertainment business called Lasting Memories Entertainment. And behind the scenes, I'm already sitting on 3 boards for the city. This will be the first board that I will be elected to by the public. And I was approached by parents who know that I'm very good with children because I was a single father of 2 of my own who went through the district. I do want to be the voice for parents because I feel that they're not really being heard as I thought they were before I entered the race. You guys have a very critical choice to make of who sits on the board. So far, we have 2 incumbents in the race, and I think the work that they've done, we would just like to continue that work for the strategic planning. We hope to get your vote. Thank you so much for listening to me. Bye-bye.
Thank you, candidates. For this next question, I want to just give a quick shout out to Cynthia Eubanks, who started it, brought it to us 2 years ago, and I really, really like starting out our forums this way. The question is to the candidates, please tell us one thing that you value about our district, the thing that we do well, that you love, and that our community can be proud of. And this time we'll start with Douglas.
Oh, thanks. I'm really proud of the College and Career Center. I think that's the biggest deal for hope and progress in not just kids, students, but for adults as well. And I'm really, really happy how close that is to the Workforce Center. I'm also very proud of the AVID program. I think it really helped my oldest daughter to succeed. She graduated from Lawrence High. She went on to the Kansas City Art Institute, and she just graduated this year with a bachelor's. And I couldn't be more proud of her, her work, and the school district's progress that helped her get to that place.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Thank you. So I think that it's hard to pinpoint just one thing that we do well, but I think that over the past year and a half, we've seen tremendous amount of strength from our teachers. During the pandemic, we've seen our teachers work tirelessly, work long hours with very few resources to do their best to provide some sort of new norm for our kids. So a big thank you to our teachers, and I think this experience showed us just how valuable our teachers are.
Thank you. Andrew.
I value the students that have already been pushed out or displaced from our district. I value the students that have been pushed and forced to be in the JDC or the therapeutic classroom. I value the students on the margins that show up at school boards and speak truth to power to district leadership. I value classified staff that has been working extremely hard against a lot of systemic barriers and institutional barriers to create a classified union across the board. And I value so many young people that I've worked with over the years in this public education system, and will continue to remember them, believe them, and tell their stories.
Thank you. Melissa.
I love how our educators always come together and pool their resources, because we don't get enough support from the district. We don't get enough respect. So we have to draw from each other in order to do that. And I just appreciate everyone that gives their whole heart all the time on the front lines, in the classrooms, working with marginalized students, working with all these constraints that the district puts on us. And it breaks my heart that we don't have the support for our students that we need, and it's a disservice to them. So I do want to thank all of the educators for reimagining this year what our classrooms and how we educate students looks like, bringing the parents in and saying, how can we help? And talking to the students and telling them it's going to be okay, and we're going to get through this together. You're not alone. Because there's a lot of times, most all the time in our district, educators feel very alone in this district.
Thank you. Kelly.
I just reread the question. It says one thing. I have a list of like 20. So I'll say that this has been an amazing experience for me, and I've seen the most extraordinary thing from our staff. The thing I'm super excited about this year is the Kansas Can Redesign project, where we have teacher-led innovation. Our teachers this year, they moved mountains. I got to observe virtual classrooms and saw second grade teachers in Swagler Elementary connecting with our students until they were nearly giggling with tears. I really want to point out that our AimsWeb data, which is one of the data points that in January showed that our students were really struggling. By the end of the year, our staff had brought our students back up to where they would have been in a year when we didn't have a pandemic. And it's not that our teachers do it alone. Certainly our classified staff are an incredible part of that support system, and the food service workers that I have interacted with when I get to go on lunches with kindergartners, which is my favorite thing on the board, have been really good partners as well. Really, it was a list of like 50 things. I wanted to mention the debate coach.
Thank you, GR.
I mentioned this during the superintendent interviews that we got to do. One of the things that I've always been really proud of about our district is the ability for us to excel in academics, athletics, and I just lost the word, vocal. Performing arts, that's the word that I lost because I'm going senile.
It's on the building.
The fact that we can excel in all three across the district, and that the fact that we give students, that multiple students, a vast majority of students can participate in multiples of at least two of those at the same time, that we give them that opportunity, that they don't have to pick one, but that we can excel district-wide in all three of those areas have always been very proud for me.
Thank you. Travis.
Just choosing one, I'm proud of our district's emphasis on diversity. I once toured Schwegler and found it to be an excellent example of how to celebrate diversity. I've heard a lot of criticism on this topic from this board in the last couple days, not board candidate forums, in the last few days, so I know there is a lot more that can be done. I intend to continue listening and to push for continuous improvement, even on the things that we're proud of.
Thank you. Kay.
Hello again. So for me, I value our resilience in the school district. I also value our innovation and our willingness to try new things. However, we must be committed to giving our educators the voice to tell us what it is that they want to try, the resources and the supports to implement, and the time and communication to expect, so they have time to plan when things are going to occur. And I think that, as Kelly had mentioned earlier, our redesign process is exciting because it really demonstrates that what happens when we give our teachers choice, when we give our students options, beautiful things can happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda.
The thing that I'm most proud about this district is the confidence and the spark that my daughter has every day when she walks into school. And that only comes from one place. It comes from her teachers, amazing teachers we've had, and the administrators of that school. But unfortunately, we have experienced some issues in learning loss this past year, and she is not one that's excelled and exceeded on the Ames test. So I'm here to speak to that, and we have not found resources to help us at this point. So I'm looking to fight for those students.
Thank you. Marcus.
I can say I'm most proud of the strategic planning that has been put in place since Dr. Lewis has showed up. I really appreciate the fact that they are really focusing on literacy by third grade for students, and also helping math proficiency by 8th grade for students. These are some things that I actually struggled with in school, so it's very nice to see that they're having plans in place to help the future for the students. I'm most proud of the diversity of the school board, and I'm also most proud of that when I spoke to my children about their experiences at Free State High School, they had nothing bad to say. So I hope to represent another part of the diversity of our great city, and I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Nate.
Like Douglas, I also believe that the College and Career Center is one of our greatest assets. I am a regular volunteer, and I have seen it in action. My son participates in the robotics program, just got done with robotics camp this week. Very exciting stuff. But I've been able to see how much we're able to encourage the technical skills. I think it's so important moving forward with these students that they understand that these kinds of technical trainings, they might be for them a better option than traditional college, perhaps, just depending on the goals and the skills that the children have. Technical school, community college, apprenticeships, entrepreneurships, these are all valid options, and perhaps they're not lesser options, perhaps they're better options. And the College and Career Center is not just a symbol of our push towards that, but also teaching them wonderful practical skills right now. So proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will follow up that question with, I'd like to ask you to tell us what you feel is the district's biggest challenge and what the role of the school board is in addressing that issue. And this time we will start with Elizabeth.
All right, thank you. So one of the biggest issues that we are currently struggling with is the compensation and the value of our paraeducators. Our paraeducators touch the lives of some of our most vulnerable youth, our youth who are in foster care, group home placements, incarcerated youth, and youth living with social and emotional illnesses. We have an obligation to better compensate our paras and really show them that we value their contributions to our youth. Our board's role is to take a good hard look at what our current structure is and look for opportunities to make improvements on how we treat our paras.
Thank you. Andrew.
The other night I heard some people say the biggest challenge was communication issues or morale or trust. Those are not our biggest challenges. Trust is an issue, morale is an issue, communication issues is an issue, but those are all symptoms of bigger systemic issues. Budget cuts from state, systemic racism, classism, ableism in our buildings, in our institutions, okay? An equity journey that when Dr. Lewis and I met one-on-one, he and I acknowledged our equity journey of 13 years that I've been a part of hasn't led in any better results than our surrounding districts or state. We still have predictably disproportionate outcomes based on discipline, based on achievement, based on graduation. It's not enough. Our strategic plan needs to be more than what it is, and we need to have people that are ready to challenge and critique what has been going on.
Thank you. Melissa.
Well, it's no secret that our school district has some budget challenges. And if we are looking at where we are putting our resources, we're spending money on empty buildings that are just sitting there, that we could be educating students in. A challenge is we talk about having a teacher shortage, and we have a staff shortage all over our district. We have custodial staff who need 15 custodians, and they only have 5. And why aren't people coming to our district? Because we don't pay well, we don't respect them. So we don't really have a shortage of staff. We have a respect issue at our district level. We don't respect our students. And I agree with Andrew. I feel like equity is just a word in our district. If we've been at this for 13 years, man, we definitely need a change because it's not working and it's not moving. So I think that those are the things we need to look at is what's currently happening is a division between administration and our educators, and that's just not good.
Thank you. Kelly.
In my opinion, the board's biggest challenge and the district's biggest challenge right now, and it's also our greatest opportunity, is to win gains in our equity work. How we do that is through equities, what the board's role in that is through equity-centered governance. That's board policy we have to review and evaluate. Does it support or hinder our efforts? What are we regularly monitoring in terms of the progress toward the goals that we are trying to achieve? Are we using a variety of different metrics to measure that? And then we have to look beyond, essentially look beyond state and standardized testing outcomes that explicitly include race. The other thing I would say in my experience this year that is something that I hadn't really thought about, but this audience is helpful. Topeka has had our legislature has had an extraordinary overreach. It is a group of people whose orthodoxy used to be let local governments lead, and instead we've seen them wading into how I operate our meetings, what we teach, and they are leveraging our students' experiences to their political gain.
Thank you. GR.
I think to me the biggest issue that we have going forward is our current budget situation. We struggled with it as we tried to close the financial gap that we have as we work with the two unions to figure out a way to solve both that budget gap and to close the pay gap that we have. It's going to take time. It's not a favorable stance to take, but it's the honest stance to take. We have to figure out how to address their concerns, address the pay gap that we have, and at the same time deal with the loss of students that hopefully most of them will come back. But that's what we have to do, and we have to do it by working through the negotiations process, working together through the interest-based bargaining process that we've laid the foundational work, and that's what I think is the biggest issue that we have.
Thank you. Travis.
I agree with GR. I think budget is the most important issue. The board's role in that is more allocation of funds instead of creating funds. Their board is supposed to select, let me start over there. The board isn't responsible for searching for creative ways to fill the gaps, though. So there simply is no money, never enough money for public education. Between the board's official roles of allocation, there are gray areas where hardworking and creative members could search for further funds, such as lobbying businesses, drafting bond issues, or even going to Topeka. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay.
Okay, so we have another budget question coming up here, so I'm going to go with my second challenge, I think. So spending time on the COVID-19 committee with the school district, helping out with crisis management on how we are going to respond to the crisis that was happening in our district. One of the things that had illuminated for me was just the possibilities and being able to see what happens when we are focusing on prioritizing choice and moving away from the traditional understanding of how we're learning. So for me, I believe that one of the biggest challenges that we have is prioritizing choice in how our students are receiving their education, in addition to how they are demonstrating that what they learned besides just tests in our school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda.
As a parent, I do feel it's critical to trust the school that you're dropping your child off to and trust that those educators are going to be looking out for her. And with lack of communication, it's hard to develop that trust. And I'm hoping in the next 6 weeks, we can, there is some communication that helps us understand what's going to happen moving forward right now. A lot of these issues, if we can just understand, we can start asking better questions for our students, and that's what I'm hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus.
I think the biggest challenge is perhaps padding some of the graduation rate numbers. I've dealt with a lot of young people in the management working here at Lawrence, and it seems like a few of them may have been just passed along. We're sending our kids to school to learn, and we want our teachers to be comfortable enough in the pay rate and scale they're getting to care about the students sitting in the seats. I don't feel that they are really giving the effort because they feel that when they're addressing the board about the budget and their pay, they're also passing that kind of misunderstanding and frustration on to the students. So some students are actually graduating not really learning anything. So I really think we need to address making sure that all kids are understanding the competency levels of the test that they're given, and we make sure we're just not passing students along so we can pad our graduation rate numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Nate.
Thank you. I believe that the greatest challenge that our district is facing is the mental health crisis. I am also a registered nurse, and I have worked front lines throughout this entire pandemic in the emergency department as well as the ICU. And I have seen the number of mental health patients who come in through the door triple since February. And the pediatric patients are on the same growth pattern. I've been in talks with Bert Nash to discuss ideas about what I might be able to do if elected in terms of perhaps expanding the RAP program, coming up with new ideas, but the well-being, the mental well-being of our teachers and students is extremely important. And it's just so horrific to say, but I have seen far too many children attempt suicide this year, and that is unacceptable.
Thank you. Douglas.
Money, that's what we all agree on. Money is needed. Also, Nate's right about how traumatic this time has been. And we need more real counselors. But to me, the biggest issue we have right now is getting in tune with where we are in time. This is not an agrarian society. This is not an industrial society. Where we are now, we can do so much, but we have to change how we do it. And that involves parents, how we involve parents. You know, you get all these papers to sign as a parent, and it's like when you click yes on an EULA form. You just, okay, yep, whatever. But our teachers need help, and the paras need help, and parents could be involved in that.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on to the next question. We have approximately 700 fewer students enrolled in our district. This translates to less money for our district, while at the same time, at the state legislature's request, we have depleted our contingency reserve funds. Please identify your priorities for the district budget and where you would look to find financial savings. And this time we start with Andrew.
I think it's a difficult question and an important one. My experience working alongside families and young peoples and a lot of families that decided to remove their students from the district was the lack of understanding of what was going to happen to their students, if they were going to be remote, hybrid, or in person. I worked with a lot of family systems, young people that were really scared to be forced back in person, and so went to an online schooling system and or other experiences. More specifically, in terms of money and finance and school finance, we talked about allocation of resources. I'm very concerned that we are top-heavy at district leadership, admin, consultants, advisors, facilitators, and yet we have a shortage of classified staff, paras, other classified staff in the buildings, food service. So I would again say that equity has to be a redistribution of resources to the front line where young people actually are. And the working conditions of certified and classified staff is the learning experiences of our students.
Thank you. Melissa.
One of the things I've thought since I've been in this district is we have to stop creating new top-paying administrative positions and put our money directly in the classroom. You know, I agree that we are completely top-heavy. We don't need any more administrators until we get our budget under control, until we can pay our classified staff a livable wage, and most of them, that way they don't have to depend on public assistance and second jobs to survive. We need to pay our educators more. We lost, 600, 700 students, not necessarily because of the pandemic, but because of the way our district leaders handled the pandemic, right? I also oversaw some remote learning from other school districts, Shawnee Mission school districts. Man, those kids that I helped with their remote learning, they didn't cry every day. Guess what? Guess who cried every day? It was the Lawrence Public School kids who cried every day. That's who it was. We dropped the ball. We waited way too long to figure out this remote learning when we already had a learning model. So we definitely need to refocus our money in the classrooms and not
Thank you,
at the
Melissa.
top.
Thank you. Kelly.
Thank you. So like districts around us, we experienced a serious enrollment drop, and we are working on that. Right now, our contingency funds are around $800,000. When I moved to Lawrence 20 years ago, it was somewhere between $6 and $8 million, which is actually sounds like a lot, but our monthly salary is around what we pay folks is around $6.1 million. So we have a cash flow problem, essentially. How we get those contingencies built back up has to be balanced with what our community told us around prioritizing paying our classified and certified staff higher wages. So the way that we do that as a board is to do it through a participatory process. We will have to make cuts to get there. So we need to engage our community, all of our staff, at every level to say where is the best place for us to make those cuts. And certainly we'll need to work with our Equity Council and our Parents of Color Council as well to make sure that where we make those cuts are not causing too much harm to get to those wage levels.
Thank you. GR.
Last year was hard. Lawrence was not the only school district that suffered a loss. Of the 289 school districts in the state of Kansas, over half of those school districts suffered a student loss of some sort. So we are not unique in this situation. Part of the process, as outlined in this strategic plan, was the forming of the budget and program evaluation team, which is made up of district personnel, community members, and board members that have started the process of evaluating how we spend our money and then bringing those evaluations and recommendations to the board in terms of helping us then determine how to make those cuts. That's how I like to process. I like to allow the district personnel and the staff who have the knowledge and the insight in using personnel to make those recommendations to us. And I think that that's a good process that we have in place that we can continue to use going forward.
Thank you. Travis.
Frontline staff pay is my biggest priority when it comes to the budget, but I also recognize that administrative pay is essential to many of the goals expressed by some of the other candidates. When I was working in power plants, I'd often come across someone else's work, and many times I would find out or see something that wouldn't quite make sense. When that happened, I had a self-imposed rule: don't assume stupid. At the last meeting, I listened to Kathy Johnson deliver the budget report, and I saw serious people doing serious work. Speaking now from the outside, assuming that I know something that they don't, I intend to add my voice to solutions and not to make assumptions.
Thank you. Kay.
Hello. So for me on this one, I think about being able to lean in on our resources. I really believe that Lawrence has a lot of great skills, information, partnerships, unexplored partnerships that we can explore and build upon in order to address our needs in our school district. So I think about when it comes to our budget, why do we keep looking outside? Why do we keep hiring consultants? You know, there's value in that. But there's also value in the people who live in our city. There's value in lifting up what we have. And so when I think about priorities, I think about our mental health services, as Nate had talked about. I think about our paraeducators, as Andrew and Melissa had also talked about. So that's what we need to do in order to address our budget, is look within. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda.
So the budget is going to be a huge challenge, and when I'm talking to Dr. Lewis, this was the biggest part of our conversation. But the one thing that I do know is that protecting the teachers and the paras at this time is where the energy needs to be, is when it comes to funds. These are issues of many friends that are teachers, and these are issues that they felt strongly about prior to the pandemic. So we cannot let that get in the way of their livelihoods. So that I will stand firm on. And it's going to be challenging, and there's going to be different organizations that things will get cut from. But looking out for teachers and paras is critical.
Thank you. Marcus.
If I sound like a broken record, I'm sorry. But teachers and paras are really our frontline workers that work with our students that we send to school every day. And I said at the other forum I was at, I just can't imagine being in front of children that you're trying to lead to success, and you don't feel like you have that same success in your own life. I think it shows on the faces of the professionals that we put in front of our students that kind of makes them not care. 700 less students, there's a lot of different things that will go into that. What we pay our actual workers in the city of Lawrence, as well as what we're doing to address issues in the school. There were some kids that picketed the last school board meeting because they felt that some kids were getting some favorable treatment when they had addressed being accosted or assaulted or raped at the school level. So there's a lot of things that will be factors to have the students leave. We just need to address our frontline workers the most.
Thank you. Nate.
Yes, I also believe that one of our top priorities ought to be paying our frontline workers a livable wage. And as an entrepreneur, having owned RPG here through the pandemic and figuring out how to pay our employees a living wage, doing it in a financially sustainable way, I think that there are things we can do. We have lost about 700 students, as the question reports, and the way that we can obtain funding is by bringing more students in. I'm currently in talks with current sitting board members to discuss some of the ideas that I have, which I'm not sure I want to share quite yet, just because I need to make sure that they are actually good ideas for the school system. But I'm working on this. I believe that there are ways to bring students back, new programs, expanding certain programs, and thank you.
Thank you. Douglas.
I haven't heard anything answering this question that I disagree with. I don't know how the operation budget works. I hope to meet with some school board members to be educated on this. But part of the reason why I'm running is 700 more students less, 1 year, and all of a sudden we're out of money. What happened? It felt like the last 5 to 6 years we were renovating every school, running around trying to accommodate, in my job, these new buildings. So all of a sudden it's gone. So what happened? I have not been educated on exactly why 700 students broke down Kennedy. Why aren't we shrieking for COVID money? How do we shriek for it? Through a megaphone? I don't know, but you know, our kids' future depends on it. And if it's not just the school district, if it's nationwide, then that's something that needs to be addressed. That takes a federal government.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Thank you. So, you know, in the not so distant past, I worked as a case manager working with kids who had social and emotional disabilities. And you know, I know firsthand we do this thing within service structures where we become administrative heavy. And what ends up, unintentionally perhaps, what ends up happening is that we end up paying the top administrative level a much, much different salary for those who are actually providing the direct service and who have the direct contact with those who are in need. I think that we have an opportunity to be, and this, when I say that, this isn't specific to just the school district, but this is a systemic issue on a much bigger level. So we have an opportunity to become leaders in our community, in the surrounding counties, and in our state, to flip that narrative. How do we flip that so that our frontline staff are compensated in a way that makes sense?
Thank you. Our next question. We have excess capacity in several of our schools, while others are struggling with large class sizes. How do you propose we equitably balance enrollment in our schools? And for this question, we start with Melissa.
I think it's important, and I know the Boundaries Committee, they're looking at this right now, but I definitely think it's important we really examine the boundary lines for our schools. We have enough capacity to have smaller class sizes in all of our schools if we just are looking at the boundaries and enforcing them. I know that's not always a popular idea, but if we enforce boundaries and we actually align them properly, you would never know. I mean, it's no secret that here in this city, and when I moved here before I worked for the school district, I lived over by Free State High School. The first thing that comes out of a student's mouth is, oh, that's the rich kid's school. And then if you talk about Lawrence High, the first thing out of a student's mouth is, that's the poor kid's school. And we really need to find a way to realign our boundaries, so that way you can't tell that there really isn't a rich kid's school, there isn't a poor kid's school, and that we change that narrative and everyone is getting the equal education that they need. That's equity.
Thank you. Kelly.
So I didn't want to miss any steps here. In 1 minute, it's really hard to get all this information in, so I'm going to read this one. Forgive me. Back in early 2010s, I was involved in a group of highly organized parents who advocated that the district use existing facilities before building new ones. As a result, the board invested during the 2013 bonds in an expanding capacity in existing elementary facilities. However, the additional capacity was largely untapped. That's partially because the 2013 bond initiative did not include a boundary shift. So it's correct that we need to look at the boundary. However, and as president, I reconvened the boundary committee. However, it's quite possible that we shift boundaries and we're unable to really maximize the capacity of each building that each building has. In which case, Lawrence has to have a pretty hard discussion around how do we accommodate our west side where we see the most growth in population, and how do we make sure that on our east side we have equitable use of our facilities that serves those communities which have lower income families.
Thank you. GR.
So this is going to start to sound like a broken record here in a minute, but sitting on the boundary committee, this is something this is a direct question that we have actually started to look at, and to look at how can we shift those boundaries to look at addressing some of that, because we do have the range in classroom size ranges from, in some cases, barely double digits to over 30. And we have the capacity that we can shift. And so that's something that the Boundary Committee is taking a hard look at. It's taking a hard look at because that's one of the things that we can do. It's not a popular thing to do, but if it needs to be done in order to address the issue, then I think it's something that we need to take a serious look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Travis.
Without stepping on my answer from the previous about making assumptions about serious people doing serious work, probably this answer comes back down to budget and boundary and then buses. If we shift around the boundaries, we're going to need more buses to transport children even further. I don't actually know because I've never looked into it, but the process for waivers for if you're in a boundary and if you'd like to attend a different school, perhaps that system could be reviewed or expanded or eased.
Thank you. Kay.
Okay. So on this one, being the chair of one of the equity advisory teams here with the school district, these are the types of questions that we've been talking about for years. So when the Boundary Committee came to, it was really exciting to see that we were putting some concerted effort in this area. But what I would say, is in addition to continuing to utilize that tool to examine the resources that we have to make plans and decisions, what we need to do is provide more time for community input and for community collaborations. So that is what I would say on that, is just we'll continue to lean on what we have already built, and we will, as we create plans, we provide more time for our community to have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda.
Currently, I work in organizational change management, and to make these changes, I feel there needs to be a strategic plan. There needs to be where everyone's needs are taken into account, and then there's asking questions and then communicating and planning for this so that the students don't have to make those hard changes quickly, because they really do feel proud of their school, many students. And so this needs to be looked at from a long-term perspective.
Thank you. Marcus.
This is a hard subject. Like she just mentioned, you are going to have to make hard choices about where kids go to school, leaving friends behind, leaving familiarity behind, but maybe the zoning and the boundaries do need to be re-examined. And part of that is having forums such as this one to inform the public that maybe we have less capacity at buildings than we should, or our classrooms are overfilling in other areas. If the public isn't aware of that, then a lot of people are comfortable keeping the thing that they are most used to the same way for always. So as long as we get the public involved in this and let them know, hey, we're having shortages here and we're having overcapacity there, maybe the boundaries and the committee that is on that will have an easier time getting this fixed for us.
Thank you. Nate?
Thank you. I agree with Marcus. I agree with most of what's been said here so far, considering the Boundary Committee. What I really appreciate the Boundary Committee is the fact that it involves various groups on the committee to discuss this very complex issue, very difficult issue. That is, as I understood Marcus, the way that we're going to reach an equitable solution by bringing everybody to the table. So I just love that about the committee, and as much as we can get the public involved, I am for that.
Thank you. Douglas?
It will take, as Kay said, community collaboration. It will take an active outreach to every parent in the school district. And I think it takes thinking about this maybe laterally. I know it comes down to budget, but maybe instead of having a rich high school and a poor high school, what about, having the underclassmen, the freshmen and sophomore go to one high school and the junior and seniors go to the other high school? Maybe there's a different way to look at how we classify and to what schools we send kids. But if we're closing neighborhood schools, then you're going to have to bus kids all over town. If you don't have fragmented, in a good way, schools at every neighborhood, then it's centralized, and you will have to bus. And the paramount problem is having smaller classes.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Thank you. So I love what I'm hearing about engaging the public and engaging parents in decisions about boundaries. I think that we have to be mindful when we work to engage who are showing up to these events, right? So if you go to one of your events, are the parents of marginalized youth showing up to these events? If not, then chances are your schools on the west side will continue to be a priority. So looking at how do we engage with our parents? How do we engage with the public? How do we get an accurate voice of those whom we're trying to advocate for? And can we prioritize our high-risk youth when making these decisions about boundary changes?
Thank you. Andrew?
I love that answer. Thank you. For me, we're talking about historical and current systemic dynamics, right? When we're talking about boundaries, we're talking about race, we're talking about wealth, and we're talking about real estate. So yes, we need to be looking at boundary shifts, but how do we look at that in an anti-racist way, in a way that doesn't compound de facto segregation in our community? It's unacceptable if we're talking about equity as a centerpiece for our district that it's very predictable what students and what families continue to lose their neighborhood schools, right? It's way too predictable. We got to stop losing schools on the east side all in the name of some version of over capacity at west side schools.
Thank you. Next question. The current board recently proposed changes to the board governance manual that states that the board will examine all decisions through an equity lens. Please speak about what that means to you and if and how you would support this work. And this time we start with Kelly.
So I support that. I wrote that. So I definitely support it. I worked with Shannon Kimball on that board manual to make sure that we were focusing our values and really had guiding principles that were rooted in equity. I mentioned before, it's a priority for me and for the other board members that I serve with that we are governing through an equity lens. So in every space that I possibly can. That's the focus of my decision making, and I would say that's the focus of all of my board colleagues' decision making. I'm proud to serve on this particular board, and I'm proud of the work that we've done to make sure that that's incorporated in all of our decisions.
Thank you. GR.
I knew I was going to break something at some point. So if any of you paid attention 4 years ago when we ran, I did this a lot, and I'm going to do it now, and I promise it's only the first time. It'll only be one time, but I can't add anything to what Kelly just said. So I'm just going to say that.
Thank you, Travis.
He is right. It's tough to follow up on that. In short, I can say that yes, I would support that statement wholeheartedly. When I mentioned that I am most proud of celebrating diversity, equity is absolutely a key component in that. So I'm just in agreement with my two fellow responders.
Thank you. Kay.
While I was not on the board yet, I also helped write that policy with the equity work that I do here in the school district, embedded out that policy. So, of course, yes, I support it.
Thank you. Miranda.
Yes, I definitely support looking through the equity lens on all decisions, but I do question if it's actually being done in a way that is affecting the children, students at an individual level. So that's something I'd like to hear more about and what's actually going on currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus.
Yes, I do support the governing manual, looking through it and making decisions through an equity lens. When I grew up in Lawrence, I grew up on the east side, and I kind of pulled myself up by my bootstraps and made something of myself. So I do want to make sure that the people that are on the board aren't there just to have an agenda to go on to other avenues, and they're saying that we need to look at everything and every decision we make through an equitable lens so that we cover all children, all sides of the town, all economic backgrounds, and all permanent TAN status. So I think that's a good thing that they started. We want to continue that if I get on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Nate.
Examine all decisions through an equity lens. Yes, I come from an immigrant family. Yes.
Thank you. Douglas.
Yes, definitely. But how are we going to engage the parents, and how will we implement this? Those are my questions, but I'm sure it's covered. I think equity lens is the way to roll. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Thank you. So understanding that equity work isn't a one-time job. We don't do one training and suddenly we now are equitable in our practices. Equity is a process. In order to really implement equitable practices, we have to understand implicit bias. And we have to really do the work and be willing to sit with some uncomfortability when we're doing equity work. So I absolutely support the work. We don't begin to heal unless we're able to recognize some stuff that's not so pretty. So I absolutely support it, and will continue to do my part, just be comfortable with discomfort.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yes to equity policy. Yes to equity lens. We just had a school board member say, I have nothing else to add. That's a problem. Get out of the way, let somebody else be on the board that can be more critical, more expansive, and more creative, because we have a lot of equity work to get into.
Thank you.
I agree with Andrew. That was kind of a cop-out for not answering the question, which is I agree with my neighbor, but I don't have anything to add. We should, the equity lens is not closing schools in our lower-income neighborhood, paying all of our staff a livable wage so they don't have to depend on 2 jobs and public assistance to survive. You know, we should always be having ideas as leaders in our community, and especially as school board members, that create equity. We should always be able to add to someone else's great idea. And if we can't do that, I agree with Andrew, get out of the way.
Thank you. We are now going to move into a speed round, and I want you to know that I wrote these questions prior to hearing from the candidates, and so some of these issues have already been spoken to or by the candidates, but this will allow all of the candidates to kind of speak to and address the same issue. They are written to be kind of, I agree, I disagree, or I need more information, and we'll give them about 15 to 30 seconds to then support that with, well, I disagree because of X. So it's not a whole minute, but I think it'll help us to kind of really see everyone on these same issues. Okay, so we'll see how it goes. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Okay, first question. We have 2 unions in our district, one for teachers and one for paraeducators. Do you support unions and collective bargaining? And for this one, we start with GR.
Yes. Sitting on the negotiations committee for 2.5 years and being able to participate in interest-based bargaining with both of those unions. I said at the meeting when we formed PAL CWA that I was proud to make that motion, and I'm still proud that we formed that union. And so I definitely support those unions, collective bargaining, and the interest-based bargaining process that we've started.
Thank you. Travis.
Yes, my experience in the field with skilled and unskilled trades has taught me that unionization is the best way forward for treating workers fairly.
Thank you. Kay.
Sorry. Yes, there's value in taking action and organizing. So I believe that we must acknowledge, in addition to we must value and respect our unions. And so I'm all in favor.
Thank you. Miranda.
As a child with a father that was in a union, I support unions and I understand the value of it, from offering benefits and safe practices and equitable wages and fighting for that group of employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus.
Yes. Whatever will keep our paras and teachers from accepting the carrot of higher wages from other districts, I support all unions and collective bargaining to pay our workers what they deserve.
Thank you. Nate.
Yes, in general, I do believe employers ought to just take good care of their employees. But yes, I am in support of the unions in our district and the negotiation process.
Thank you. Douglas.
Hell yes, Teamster 696. Yes.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Ditto, Douglas, ditto. Yes, I support.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yes, unions and collective bargaining. I am a member of the teacher union, and I've been alongside classified staff, and especially some of the paras that tried to create, have been creating and leading the classified union, especially against a lot of gatekeeping and barriers that were created by district leadership.
Thank you. Melissa.
I 100% support unions. I actually was a key person in organizing PAL CWA against all the obstacles the district set up for us. So when our current leaders say they support unions, let's just be clear. Only if you jump through every single tricky hoop that they want to do, or they're backed up against the wall where they can't say no, do they support unions. Let me just say that. So, and I'm proud to be a union, previous union member of CWA, PAL CWA, and I'm glad that through my work there and my campaign, I started advocating for better wages, and now I've changed the narrative of this campaign to where I see everybody talking about paying our classified staff better wages and our educators better wages. So you vote for me because I've already invoked change.
Thank you. Kelly.
Yes, I'll just note that in my first semester of being on the board, G.R. Gordon Ross invited me to a meeting with a paraeducator where he advocated that I and he lead the charge to make sure that paraeducators were able to take their dues out of their paychecks, and that's actually what led to the board's work, our part in it, and making sure that the classified union was recognized. During my tenure as presidency, as a president of the board, I've also made sure that we saw a fully recognized classified union, and did also have support from every board member to do that. I'll also mention that I work on the negotiations team and have worked closely with the LEA, and worked in my first tenure as also to make sure that we change the way that we bargain to interest-based bargaining.
Kelly.
I can see some of them here, so I can talk about this for a while. Thank you.
Thank you. The speed round was an experiment. Thank you. Okay. The district employs hundreds of, oh, wait a minute. Yes. Sorry. The district employs hundreds of hourly staff who make less than a living wage and work multiple jobs to support their families, while at the same time, data collected during Dr. Lewis's listening tour showed that increasing compensation for education
as mentioned before, my dad was a teacher, my partner is a teacher. I know very well what teacher pay is, and I know that it could be better and maybe even commensurate with engineering pay. I'd be happy with that.
Thank you. Kay.
Yes. I think that we must prioritize our wages in our school district, but I think that in order to do so, we have to lean in. We have to lean into the resources that already exist in our community to be able to afford it. So, yes.
Thank you. Miranda.
Yes, I support it. As a sole provider for my child and a single mother, I know the struggles that go into trying to work and support and be the best parent you can be. And if we can help with a livable wage, our staff and teachers will definitely ease their burden. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus.
Yes. How is a living wage not already a thing? You know, it's kind of sad that the people that we trust with our kids to teach us, we might see them at the local Dunkin' Donuts later on in the evening. Paying a living wage is something that is really something that should be top priority, and we shouldn't have all these disgruntled people that are teaching our students, because I'm telling you, some of that frustration is being passed on to the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Nate.
Yes, for a living wage. At RPG, we do pay our employees $15 an hour or more, and I would work very hard to make sure that that happens in the school district as well.
Thank you. Douglas.
Yes, living wage is needed, definitely for our instructors and their support staff. Our entire society could do with a living wage.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Yes, I support a living wage at the bare minimum. A living wage is the very least that we can do, but I absolutely support it.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yes, our classified staff, those are our graduates, those are our parents, those are our families. And we aren't going to be able to get to a living wage unless we acknowledge that we need to look at our six-figure wages and do something about that to get to actually our non-living wage hourly.
Thank you. Melissa.
I have been fighting for the past 2 years to get our classified staff a livable wage, and I'm still fighting. From the beginning of my campaign, I mentioned our staff needs a livable wage. They shouldn't have to depend on public assistance for 2 jobs. And I just want to give credit where credit is due. Kelly said it was her and GR's work that got PAL CWA recognized. It was not their work. It was the members of PAL CWA's hard work, right? It was the founding members of PAL that took 3 years to even get acknowledgement. And the last 2 years of trying to actually get acknowledgement and organize as PAL CWA. So it wasn't their successes. It was the members and the staff and the teachers that supported us. It was their success. That's how we got PAL CWA recognized, not by them.
Thank you.
Point of
Kelly.
clarity, that what I said was the board side of the work, not PAL CWAs. The classified union has been trying to organize for 20 years, and I'm glad to have collaborated with them to get there. So and yes, I believe that we need to work toward a living wage. We have to do it in a way that's reasonable, and we have to do it in a way that doesn't harm others. And when I say others, I mean our students. And so that might be through looking at how do we work collaboratively, again, with our program analysis to back into that number through the course of the next couple of years. Right now, we have our wages up to about $11 per hour. That's not acceptable. We pay 100% of individual health benefit premiums for 12 months for our 9-month employees. That's still not enough to offset the wage issue. So we do have to work with folks to get us through this financial crisis and get to that number.
Thank you. GR.
Yes, I support moving the district toward paying a livable wage. Like Kelly said, it's going to take some time, and it's going to be identifying what that number is and then figuring out how to target that number, and then figuring out how to back into that number over the next few years as we target where those cuts can happen, how those cuts can happen, and how to do that by the least amount of pain and suffering as possible. We've started those conversations with the LEA, and we need to continue those conversations with PAL CWA through the same IBB negotiations process in a collaborative conversation.
Thank you. Next question. We struggle to recruit and retain quality teachers. Do you support efforts to move the district towards salaries that are more competitive with Kansas City school districts? And for this question, we start with Kay.
Okay, yes, and we do this by building out our partnerships with businesses, by providing initiatives and incentives, not initiatives, but incentives for our teachers and our staff. In addition to building out our what's the word I'm looking for? I love this when I do this. Our neighborhoods, and focusing on community. So that was fun, going first.
Thank you. Miranda.
Yes, I support that. I know that's been an issue for a long time in Douglas County, but that is going to come with a cost, and I do think that's something that we need to acknowledge and know that higher wage, the money's going to be taken from something, and so we have to decide what that something is, and it's not going to feel good for everyone, but it's a reality.
Thank you. Nathan. I'm so sorry. Marcus. Yes, I can't see it.
I'm not on the board yet, but it seems like there's a governing body above the board in Topeka that really allocates the budget. I am really for salaries for teachers to keep everyone here and to keep everyone happy. I just can't believe this is even a topic that we're having to address, because I just assumed that it was a kind of a thing that you did when you went to college for 4 years or more, that you made enough money to support your family and teach people success. So I'm all for salaries if we can get the money and not defund important things that we would like.
Thank you. Nate.
Yes, if you cannot get behind salaries that are competitive to Kansas City districts for reasons within liberal ideology, get behind it for capitalistic reasons. I mean, we're talking about competition. We want to bring we want to bring teachers here. We want to make sure that we give the best experience to our kids, and we want to give our children the greatest experience possible.
Thank you. Douglas.
Yes. Yes. We also might think about why people like to live in Lawrence. It's not just for the money, but we definitely need to have competitive wages, and it wouldn't hurt to offer more intangibles, give workers a lasting piece of the action, maybe in a capitalistic sense, or at least in a communal sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Thanks. So yes, I think we also need to place a lot of emphasis on the recruitment of educators of color. We know that kids do better when they see teachers who look like them. So focusing efforts on recruiting native Spanish speakers, additional diverse groups of educators should be a huge focus of this district.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yes. And yes to the question. We need to also look closely and make sure the district leadership is not putting certified staff in negotiations against classified staff and making them compete against each other to divide and conquer, and instead looking at administrative costs and salaries so that we can ensure that certified staff and classified staff has the salaries and wages that they're deserving of.
Thank you. Melissa?
Well, it's probably no surprise that my answer is yes. I just want to say to our educators, I appreciate every educator that chooses to stay in Lawrence or come to Lawrence to work in our schools when they could go to any neighboring districts and make a significant amount more. And while our school district may pay a single payer premium, what they're not telling you is that then it's $800 to cover your family and insurance. So is that great? No, but our educators deserve more. All of our classified staff deserve more. We definitely need to examine that, and I stand in solidarity with both LEA and PAL CWA in getting you better wages.
Thank you. Kelly?
So yes, and along with the things that my candidate colleagues have said, I'll just recognize one other thing that I think is important as a point of advocacy just in terms of education for you all. Board members have to advocate for State House policies that support a long-term sustained commitment to state funding for CAPERS, including changes to make CAPERS a more attractive retirement program to support, recruit, and retain our highly qualified teachers, administrators, and support staff. And we need to support reinstating the previous working after retirement laws to allow CAPERS retired staff to continue working without penalty.
Thank you. GR?
Yes, I absolutely support trying to raise that wage to compete with competing districts. Pretty much the same answer that we had for our classified staff as we work with the union through the IBVU process, and we identify what that number needs to be and how we can back into it. As Miranda said, when you have a budget that's roughly 86, 87% people, in order to fund that, you got to cut it from somewhere. And so by working collaboratively.
Thank you. Travis?
I think I kind of jumped the shark on this answer when I said something about teacher pay being equal to engineering pay, ideally. I mean, I know that we live in the real world. And I definitely didn't mean to leave out the PALCWA group when I was mentioning that. I figured that would come along with. I guess my first question to that question would be, how does Johnson County manage to pay so much better? What are their boards doing that our boards aren't? And what tricks, secrets, tips, what can we bring to our city council? What can we change to copy or emulate that and raise the funding necessary to pay teachers better?
Okay, we are unfortunately out of time, but we have two questions that are near and dear to my heart. So we're going to go to yes, no. Sorry. If you want follow-up, I think our candidates are willing to be in the lobby afterward. All right, here it is. Lawrence Board of Education policy prohibits discrimination against any individual on the basis of gender identity or gender expression. Do you support the rights of trans students to participate in school sports in a manner consistent with their gender identity? And Miranda, you start us off. Yes or no?
No.
Marcus?
Yes.
Nate?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Melissa?
100% yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
GR?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
Kay?
Yes.
Thank you all. Okay, last question. There is a movement in this country to put limitations on teaching history and humanities through the lens of race and equality. Do you believe that students should be taught to explore history and the humanities broadly, which includes an examination of race and equality? And Marcus, you start us off.
Absolutely, yes. History is something that has been taught and told by the victor, but there are a lot of stories that are not being told, and it kind of lets adults grow up unaware of the history of the country they live in. In a way, I don't want to take away from the group that has already called this, but we're all Native Americans. If we were born in a hospital here in this country, you are of this country, and you should know everything that there is to know about the equality and the inequalities that have taken place in our history.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Marcus. Nate, I'm sorry. Yes or no if you can. Nate. Do you want to restate the question?
Yeah, yes, I do believe that.
Thank you. Douglas.
Yes.
Yes.
History, yes. I love Prosperity Discussion War. It's my favorite class in high school. Know everything you can.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
GR.
Yes.
Travis.
Yes. History's best lessons are always in its unabridged form.
Kay.
Yes, and excitingly, we have a social studies review going up in this next year, so it's going to be a really exciting time in our school district.
Thank you. Miranda.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes the questions. I apologize for running a bit late. I want to thank our candidates for your willingness to serve on the USD497 School Board, and I want to say thank you to our live and virtual audiences for your engagement in the democratic process. Our voting rights are under attack nationally. Join us on August 21st for an exploration of voter suppression in our state, and please register. Everyone you know to encourage them to register to vote and to vote. Now please join me in thanking our candidates.